Everybody, I'm French Grandmaster Fabien Libiszewski, and welcome on this video on Sicilian Kalashnikov. So this will be the introduction of the series of video, and Sicilian Kalashnikov, or also known as Lowenthal variation, starts like this: e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and the move e5. So e5 is quite an aggressive move, because we are attacking this knight, which will move for the third time in the opening. So this knight has many options, and we will have a look at every possibilities for white. So he can exchange, go back on b3, on f3, on f5, or on b5, which is the main move. But let's see what happens if white takes on c6. So it will help us a lot, actually. It's not a great move by white. Because when we play e5, so as I said, the good part is that we attack this knight, which has to move for a third time. But at the same time, we are weakening somehow our pawn structure, and mainly this square on d5, which can be used by a knight. For example, this knight from b1 could jump on c3 and then on d5 in the future. So that might be good for white. And also we have this backward pawn on the d file, which can be attacked. And if white capture our knight on c6 and we take back with the b pawn, it helps us a lot because we are covering this d5 square. So now no white pieces can come to d5, and also it will help us to play d5, which is a move that we are really eager to play. If we manage to play d5 in this opening, then usually black is fine, or even more than fine actually, because we take control over the center, and we won't have any more backward pawn and so on. So taking c6 helps black. Also we can use this b5 for the rook in the future. And black's idea will be simply to develop the knight on f6, attacking e4, then developing this bishop, let's say on e7, or more active square on c5, castle, and then thinking about the move d5. I chose the correspondence game just to show you some ideas. White played bishop c4, developing the bishop. Black continued with knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4. White protected with knight c3, bishop c5, short castle, and here white played a dubious move, but king h1, why not, I have to say, because at the first sight it seems more or less logical, because f4 is the idea for white. But here black played very good move, and typical one, as I said, it's d5. It doesn't seem so good because white has 4 pieces attacking this pawn, so it seems to lose one pawn. But black's idea is not to recapture the pawn with c takes d5, but to play knight g4. And we are bringing the knight into action with the help of the bishop and the queen, who can join the attack on h4, will attack on h2 and on f2. And that is a big problem for white, because knight takes f2 is the main threat, and at the same time queen h4 is very annoying, threatening a mate on h2, and at the same time taking this pawn on f2. So white played f3, hoping maybe that after knight f2, rook takes f2, they will have some compensation for the exchange. But black found an even stronger move and played knight takes h2. Problem for white is that they cannot take back because queen h4 is checkmate. And if the rook move, then queen h4 is coming, and discovery attack then leads to mate. So white played a move like queen e1, avoiding queen h4, but then black just took the rook and has exchange up after only 13 moves. So yeah, black is already winning. So I just wanted to show you that this move isn't so threatening. We'll see another game, an historical one of La Bourdonnais with black pieces, in another video. But it's not a move that I would recommend for white. So let's see what happens in b3. Which is very common in many Sicilian defense. But here it's not so good, because black will play with tempo his development, knight f6, attacking this pawn, and at the same time we want to push d5, and it's not easy for white to avoid all this. knight c3 might be the move you will face here. I have to say that bishop g5 is an idea to protect the pawn by pinning the knight, but black has this nice move, bishop b4 check. The idea is that if white plays c3, which is logical, then we go back to e7, and then we put this pawn here, and the knight cannot then jump to c3 and to d5. So with bishop e7, we stop the pin, so this pawn is under attack, and let's say white takes, bishop takes, we will castle, play d6, developing the bishop, and trying to play d5 next. So that is already okay for... So let's have a look at this move, knight c3, bishop b4, so we are developing with tempo, up, this knight is pinned, bishop d3 protect the pawn, but then now we have the time to play d5, and we have a better position with black already. Because after e takes d5, knight takes d5, this knight is under attack, let's say bishop d2 to protect, knight takes c3, b takes c3, then we bring back the bishop on e7, castle, castle, and we can stop here and say confidently that black is better because we have a better pawn structure. We will develop our bishop here, put the rook on the c file in front of this weak pawn. We might think about f5 in the future, and also I have to say that this knight is out of play. If needed, we could play a move like b6 to control the squares c5 and a5 and keep it out of play. And yeah, that's quite easy to play for black. That would be a really good surprise if white chose this line against us. Yeah, I have to mention that maybe you will face some opponent who will play bishop c4, trying to keep an eye on f7 and trying some tricks like this, but actually it does not work that well for white, because the knight is under attack, f7 also, but we can play knight d6, protecting both, and at the same time attacking this bishop. So here white hasn't enough compensation. So instead of queen d5, they should try bishop takes f7, king takes f7, and now queen d5 check, winning back the pawn and denying black the right to castle. But actually it's not such a big deal, because we can play d5, our main idea. We win one tempo over the queen, and we want to continue with d4 attacking this knight. We will not win a piece, because a3 counterattack the bishop. If we take the knight, they take the bishop. But we will go back to e7. This knight has to move, and we can centralize the queen, let's say on d5, with the idea to play bishop f5 attacking this knight. And we can just stop here. And what is the good part for black is that we have the bishop pair. We have a very, very strong center with these two pawns on e5 and d4. The only drawback is that we cannot castle, but we can make it by hand by playing maybe rook f8 next, king f7, king g8 with a great position. The other rook will join the fight on d8 or on c8 or maybe on e8. We don't know yet, not sure. But this plan with rook f8 and the king running to g8 seems very promising for black, with yeah, very good position. So knight b3, as you can see, isn't so threatening. It's more or less the same about knight f3. We will continue with the same logic with knight f6 attacking this pawn, pinning the knight, and of course if white plays bishop d3 we go for d5, and it's more or less the same. Only thing I will mention here is that bishop c4 is much stronger on this move order with the knight on f3 than on the line with the knight on b3. Because if we take right now queen d5, knight d6, the big difference between this knight on f3 and on b3 is that the bishop has a square to go and maintain the pressure on f7. I don't really like black pieces like this, because this knight on d6 protects f7, but it blocks our d7 pawn, then it will be difficult to develop the bishop and so on. So here white would have some compensation for sure. So it's better just to castle and to delay the capture and this capture of the e4 pawn. If white protects with queen d3, then we will make this d5 break anyway, because if they take, we have e4 coming. So that is good for black. Usually white castle, then we can win this pawn like this, and you can see that it's useful to have the rook, which protects f7. We don't mind a move like rook e1, because we'll grab another pawn, and even if the knight seems in trouble, actually we have this strong move d5, which attacks this bishop, and we might play e4 or bring back the knight then, so that's good. Here, white's main move is bishop a3, attacking the rook, and as we said, the rook is useful to protect f7, so we'll just play d6, blocking the bishop. Then rook e1, we will have to remove our knight, but actually we can play knight g5. So yeah, the idea is that if white takes on d6, we will take this one, and the queen might not at the same time take on f3 and defending the bishop. So white has to take, queen takes, then take on d6. We will pin this bishop. Queen f3 is a good move, avoiding the pin and attacking f7, but then queen f6. We go for the endgame, and I think it's more or less balanced, as we have equality in material. White has the bishop pair, but we have a better pawn structure. Even if we have double pawn, those ones on the c file are weaker, I think, because it's much easier for black to attack it. Because we have an open file, and we can bring the rook. We'll play bishop e6, trying to exchange the bishop pair. Rook c8, and maybe the knight would jump here, and I think it's okay for black. White can hold, of course. I don't think white is worse, actually, but yes, it's a very decent position after the opening for black. So, as you can see, knight a3 doesn't bring us some issue. Neither does knight b3 or knight c6. So, let's have a look at knight f5, which seems at first sight very promising, because this knight wants to jump to d6, and also keeping an eye on d5 with the idea to go to e3, so the knight would go to d5, or just help the other knight to go there. So, on a strategical part, it seems very logical for white and very well played. But the drawback is that we have this d5 move one more time, which helps us a lot. Yeah, the problem for white is that this pawn has to protect the knight. And of course they could take, so let's say queen takes d5, queen takes d5, e takes d5, but then we'll take this knight, white will take on c6, pawn takes c6, but here we cannot complain with black, because we have this bishop already developed, attacking the pawn on c2, so if white wants to keep it, let's say bishop d3, we will exchange, play long castle, and yeah, game is more or less leveled, but we have absolutely no issue with black, and we cannot say that this move knight f5 is an issue for us. So that's why actually the main move on this Kalashnikov variation is knight b5, because all other moves doesn't work quite well, let's say. So white wants to play knight d6 check, so we will avoid it with d6, and now white has two main lines. There are other moves, but two main lines. So the most obvious is knight c3, which is the main move. The other one is c4, playing for kind of Maroczy bind, let's say. The idea of c4 is to restrict the push of a6 and b5, and also d5. The drawback of this move, of course, is to put another pawn on light square, so this bishop is not that strong, and also it weakens this square on d4, which might be useful one day for our knight. But just to tell you what happens after knight c3, we will play a6, chasing this knight away, because if not, white will play knight d5, and we will have some issue with knight c7 coming. So a6 is good. Remember that usually you play a6 once white has played knight c3, because this knight has to go out of play on a3. So that's quite good to put a knight on the edge of the board. And the move I will recommend in this series video is b5. There are other options for black, such as bishop e7 to develop, or bishop e6, which is quite fashionable now, but b5 is okay. We are threatening to make a fork, and at the same time we keep this knight out of play, which cannot go to c4. So usually white plays knight d5, very logical, avoid the fork, put the knight on a strong square, and now knight g7. Typical position of the Kalashnikov. Knight f6 would transpose to Chesnikov variation. The main difference between the two squares is that after knight f6, white could play for the pin with bishop g5 and exchange his knight. So they are eliminating this knight which fights for the center and the light squares. But actually it's completely playable for black, of course. It's just another opening. Carlsen played it in his World Championship match against Fabiano Caruana in 2018, and he played it also at several occasions. So, okay, for sure it's good for black, but we will speak about this move 97. The idea is that after bishop g5, the pin is less annoying, as white cannot take and double or pounce through. So, first thing to say, usually white tries to strengthen this knight in the center by c4. We will exchange it. And white has two options, and we will see more of it in the next videos on the theoretical part and also some model games. They could choose to take like this, avoiding some tension with the pawns, but the knight will go to d4, good square for our knight, and then usually we develop with g6, bishop g7, castle, and we will try to play maybe f5 or something like this. The other way to play is e takes d5, knight d4, and white usually can take on b5 and win one pawn, but then we will play for compensations. After pawn takes b5, bishop d7 or bishop e7 are two good options. Black has good dynamic play, as we can see. And as I said, white has the other way to play with c4, so we will not be able to play a6 and b5, but we will just develop. So as I said, don't rush with a6, because this knight, instead of going on the edge of the board, would go to c3, and then will go to d5, and the other knight will have a good square on c3. So that will just help white. So just remember that you just develop. Knight c3, now it's time to go e6, knight a3, and here we have two ways to play. I would recommend the aggressive one with f5, but of course we can play just bishop e6, which is more quiet. The idea is to play rook c8, putting some pressure on c4, and also maybe to keep the option to play bishop g5 to exchange the dark square bishop, which is not our best minor PC. And yeah, if we exchange it, that's quite a good idea. But f5 is possible here because as white played c4, they will not be able to take benefits of this diagonal a to g8 that we are weakening with f5, so there is no bishop c4 or stuff like this, and then it will help us. We will have a look at the historical game between John Nunn and Igor Alexander Nataf. Very nice game that I will show you in the next video, in which Nunn played bishop d3 and black grabbed some space with f4, and it's quite promising for black. So usually white takes here, we take back with the bishop, and we want just to develop with knight f6, castle, and so on. Usually white plays bishop d3, and just remember that you don't want to exchange your light square bishop. Just keep it alive, because as your pawn structure is on dark square and blocked on dark squares, you don't have pawns to control the squares I will show like this, let's say, on e4, d5, f5, light squares actually. So the bishop does this job, helps to control squares here, and you will just play knight f6, castle, and then we'll see. Some plan is to bring the queen here, the rook on e8, and maybe try to play e4 and knight e5. Also, the knight might jump to d4, very good square, and this bishop might be better in the future on this diagonal, or sometimes jumping here and putting pressure on f2. So we will see all of that. I hope that you enjoyed this introduction video, and see you later for next ones.